Our target market is almost a state of mind. And, we're looking for travelers who are after certain things in their life, and they're after more experiences. They're after getting involved in the destination. They want to learn. They want to meet people. They're quite social. They want to have fun. They want to be respectful to the destination they're going to, etc. And so we just kind of create the brand around a set of values, if you like, of what we are as a business, and to a certain extent, hope we attract the right people.
Welcome to TravelDine. I'm Peter Bates in New York. Today we travel to Melbourne, Australia to meet the chairman and the co-founder of the largest small group adventure travel company in the world. This is a company which normally offers more than 1,000 escorted tours worldwide. Tours are offered under a collection of brand names, including Intrepid Travel, Peregrine Adventures, and Urban Adventures. This Australian company, through 2019, had 4 record years of growth. And in fact, in January 2020, it was one of their best months ever. And like so many, the world slowed. And then it stopped. Launched 32 years ago by 2 Melbourne University graduates who described themselves as just a couple of backpackers who hit on a good idea, today the founders, staff, and a strategic French investment partner, Carnegie, own 23 destination management companies around the world, and now have a united vision, changing the way people see the world. Carnegie became a strategic partner in April last year and hold a minority stake in the business. Intrepid says the partnership will facilitate the company's growth strategy in 4 key areas: digital transformation, product innovation, market expansion, and purpose initiatives. And it will help Intrepid become the first $1 billion adventure travel company by 2025. In 2019, Intrepid Travel, which is the world's largest B Corp, had a record of 419 million Australian dollars in sales. Darrell Wade is the Intrepid chairman and co-founder. During his career, Darrell has been recognized as a leader in entrepreneurship and as a passionate advocate for sustainable tourism. Leading Intrepid's climate management program, the company realized its goal of becoming carbon neutral in 2010. Darrell was also one of the first Australians to complete climate project training with former US Vice President Al Gore. Darrell has been recognized with countless awards and serves in several capacities, including being a mentor for the University of Melbourne's entrepreneurship program and a member of the executive committee of the World Travel and Tourism Council. Today, we're joined by a dynamic leader and a natural communicator whose enthusiasm for and dedication to sustainable tourism and adventure travel continue to grow. Darrell, welcome to TravelDine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Peter. Absolute pleasure.
That's very kind of you. So 32 years ago, you and your fellow university student, Jeff Manchester, created a company. But tell us a little bit of the background. How did you get to that?
Look, I think, to be honest, Peter, it's a bit of an accident, really. I'd spent a good bit of my time post-university avoiding work, doing as a lot of Australians do, grab a backpack and go travelling, and then you run out of money and you get a job for a while, and then you go travelling again, and the cycle repeats. And my friend at university, who we call Manch, so if anyone, called him Jeff, I call him Manch, but anyway, he was similar, although perhaps a bit more studious than I was, and kind of did a bit more work and a little bit less travel. But anyway, one day we just kind of talked about how we can avoid the corporate hustle and bustle and do something we really loved. And so we kind of created this idea of how we wanted to travel ourselves. And the rest is history, I suppose as they say.
Fantastic. And you and Manch are both working in the business still today, right?
Yeah, look, we are, although not like we used to. I was the CEO for the majority of the history of the company, but I moved on from being CEO about 3 or 4 years ago. And so now I'm just chairman, which gives me the great pleasure of doing what I want to do and not what I don't.
Well, that's great. But of course, the pandemic caused a huge pause in your global operations. What sort of effect did it have? I mean, you had over 2,000 employees right around the world at the time.
Yeah, that's right. And so obviously from a business point of view, it's been extreme. But I think, when the pandemic lands, like I can remember March 13, like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
We had travelers in, I think, about 87 different countries. And we realized that we had a major problem. Everything was shutting down kind of before our eyes. And so we just made the decision to cease operations, which is 3 or 4 words or something. But, the impacts of that are extreme. And, we just realized that we had to get everyone home. And, you go from being a tour operator, which when you think about it is really taking people from their homes to exotic destinations and having a great time. And then all of a sudden it's almost in reverse where we say, well, our sole mission is to get people back home and get them safe. And, with airports kind of closing and borders closing, it was a difficult task, so we had a team kind of literally working 24/7 for about 3 weeks to get everyone finally home.
And then refunds to worry about as well, right?
That's right, exactly. And so, in the next few months we had, I can't remember the number, but it would have been tens of thousands of people expecting to depart, which obviously weren't departing. In many cases, they were fully paid. So, like a lot of travel companies, you prefer to hold on to the money if you possibly can, but also recognizing the consumers have got genuine, legitimate rights. And to be honest, we didn't get that quite right. We were I think we're half just concerned about getting people home and all the rest of it. And we weren't as responsive. We weren't listening to people as well as we should. But within 2 or 3 weeks, we fixed that around and got people to do what they wanted to do. We offered them to hold their money in credit with a 10% bonus, if you like, for whenever they could travel with no open-ended dates or refunds. And so, in fact, I think about 85% of the people kept their money with us. In a way, it was kind of immaterial because the money was there. It's not like we spent it or anything like that. We physically had it in accounts, so that was okay. But I guess from a business perspective, it's always nice to know that you've got travellers in the bank ready to go when travel does resume. So, that was great that people had the faith to, generally speaking, keep money in their accounts with us.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, your clients are all over the world, basically, aren't they? I mean,
yeah, that's right. So we're
everywhere.
Yeah, we're Australian based, but as you said, we've got about 2,000 staff, and those staff are based in, I think, about 38 countries. And so our offices around the world are kind of in 2 parts. They're either in destination, Peru or Vietnam or Italy or wherever it is, or in the source markets, America, England, Australia, wherever it is. And so, the job of the company is going to connect the dots and, from where people are traveling to where people are traveling to. And so you need staff at all ends of that mix.
You kept money, you settled down, and you didn't know when it was going to end. But you spent the time, as I understand it, looking at a complete digital transformation of your company. Yeah,
well, it was one of those, we'd had the good fortune, I guess, of having a few very, very good years. And, as shareholders, there's the 2 primary shareholders, the 2 founders, but we also had about 70, 80 staff as shareholders. And overall, we haven't been greedy shareholders. So the balance sheet of the business has been very good. And so we just thought, well, okay, let's just ride this thing out. And whether at the time you don't know whether it's going to last 3 months or 3 years, of course. No. You hope it gets 3 months, but you don't know. It wasn't. Yeah. No. And just thought, well, there's a lot of a backlog of projects that we've always wanted to do, but because we've been growing fast, we've never been able to do or never got around to it. And so we thought, okay, let's really concentrate on our digital transformation, really get our systems up to speed. So yes, you're right. We spent quite a bit of time and effort and money on that digital transformation, which is still ongoing. It hasn't finished, but certainly we're really pleased with the progress.
Fantastic. And is that mainly in Australia, or does that taking into account offices around the world?
Yeah, everything. So I mean, we've been a paperless company for years, and so in that sense, we're kind of digital anyway. And a client can, book a trip from Germany for argument's sake, and they'll travel to Bolivia for argument's sake, and no one touches anything anywhere. Like the whole thing is digital in that context. However, there's still back office systems that aren't necessarily integrated with each other as well as they could be. And, it's down deep in the plumbing, down in the weeds, but it's just really important work that's got to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. So at least that was a useful time to do it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. But as you say, you've got all this staff around the world. I'm sure a lot of them left the business, but a lot stayed. But how do you keep that spirit going in such a difficult time? How do you done that?
That's right. And that's, I guess we've always thought about our business as having two key customer groups, if you like. One is our obvious customers, our travelers. And so, how do we keep them engaged through the process? But the other one is our staff. And, ultimately, as a travel company, we don't really... we don't have any real ownership of anything. We own a few vehicles and things like that, but ultimately our staff are our asset, and we're as good as our customers. And that's a bit of a glib throwaway line, but in our case, it actually is true. So it's all about the experience that we can deliver to people. So that question you just asked was probably our biggest single concern. How are we going to keep people is where we can. And how are we going to keep them engaged? And so James, our CEO, made a call very, very early on that he was just going to have total transparency with people. And even before we stopped operations, word of COVID was increasing. People were seeing the cancellations coming in. And so he just, we've always been quite transparent, but he just decided to go extra steps and held weekly meetings with all staff everywhere in the world. And did in all sorts of time zones and everything. And he just talked the whole time about exactly what was happening, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, it's risky because obviously we were talking about some stuff that people just didn't want to hear. When you think about it at a shallow level, people want to feel security and safety and confidence building. We couldn't do that, because we didn't know ourselves. So we just decided, okay, we're not going to bullshit people. We're just going to say it as it is, as best we know it. And we could say with honesty and confidence, look, we will get through this thing. We've got the good fortune of having a good balance sheet and whatnot. What we couldn't say is your job is absolutely secure. And when it'll be returned and so on and so forth. So we just decided to be really honest and that is something we will keep with us forever because our staff clearly appreciated it. And, we only about a week ago, actually, we just got we do engagement surveys fairly regularly with all staff globally. And we just got the last one, which was just a shorter pulse survey a week or so ago. And our engagement score for our staff was actually higher than it was pre-pandemic, which we were shocked about because, given all the bad news and, to be honest, our staff have been through hell. It's just been an awful time for them. Yeah. So, to be able to have them as engaged in the business and feeling as positive as they are, we're really thrilled, and it's a real credit to them and our leadership team, I think.
Yeah. Communication, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So can you paint a picture for me? What's a typical client look like?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think when we started 30 odd years ago, we kind of thought, our travelers are going to be, young, post-university, probably got a job, got 2 weeks annual leave, and, they'll be able to do a lot with us in 2 or 3 weeks annual leave. And that was our initial market. But I guess as those people have grown up and now, some of them have traveled 40, 50 times with us, and new people have come in, the age ranges and gender and nationality and everything has diversified enormously. So we no longer think we have a target market, which sounds a bit weird. So we really say, well, our target market is almost a state of mind. And, we're looking for travelers who are after certain things in their life, and they're after more experiences. They're after getting involved in the destination. They want to learn. They want to meet people. They're quite social. They want to have fun. They want to be respectful to the destination they're going to, etc. And so we just kind of create the brand around a set of values, if you like, of what we are as a business, and to a certain extent, hope we attract the right people that those values kind of resonate with them, and they're not necessarily 30 years old or 50 years old or anything else. They're just that certain kind of person, and overall it works. People find us and people come back.
And that's important. The repeat business is quite high for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And so, strangely enough, we're pretty terrible at data management. We don't always know who our clients are, and, we get lots of things right, particularly the quality of the trip, but we're not very good on marketing in terms of, Peter, I know you've done a trip with us before and I know where you went and blah, blah, blah. We're not great on that. Okay. I'd like to tell you that, 68% repeat factor or something like that. I've got no idea, to be honest. But all we know is that, I was on a trip a couple of years ago, and it was to a more fringe destination, to Azerbaijan and Georgia. And, there was 12 of us on the trip, and I think 10 of them were repeat travelers, and some of them had done 30, 40 trips before, like extraordinary. Now, that tends to happen with the more obscure destinations, just because people have, they've already done the more common trips in Vietnam or Italy or whatever. And as they repeat more and more trips, they go to the more fringe destinations. And so they find more like-minded travelers on those trips, because there are other travelers who have done an awful lot of trips too, and a lot of traveling too.
Well, that's fantastic. So this year, Fast Company made you one of the world's most innovative companies, I think. That must help with solidifying this customer base.
Look, it probably does, yes. It's interesting, why are we especially innovative? We don't necessarily feel like we're that innovative, but obviously they did.
Yeah.
So that's nice and that's flattering, and it's a decent magazine, and so presumably lots of people read it. Probably some people who read it will travel with us or talk about us, and again, that just increases the pool of people who have an understanding of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So in this last 17 months, how have you been communicating with those travelers, that client base, or have you been, to keep them interested? Have you been doing a lot of work there?
Yeah, we have, and so it's not so different to our staff in many respects. Like, we're conscious, although where it is different is that our travellers aren't actually travelling, and so we're conscious that we don't want to bombard them with email or whatever it is when they're not going anywhere. They're probably not going anywhere soon, and so right here today, travel is not necessarily one of the things that is front of mind for them. So we don't want to, spam them and annoy them. So, it's been a more subtle thing where we try to engage them. We do send less emails, but we just keep involved. And our marketing guys are pretty good on that space in terms of, knowing when we're hitting the buttons, when we're not. And so, it is email, it is social, it is, webinars and things like that. We've also, we talked briefly before on tech and systems and stuff, but one of the other things we've really doubled down on is our sustainability efforts. And so you mentioned in the intro, we're a significant B Corp, and so our values and the way we work is really important to us, and that's drops down to a whole set of criteria, and we've been working hard on those criteria. And some of those criteria some of them are relatively boring and people don't want to hear about boring but important stuff, but others are quite interesting, and so we'll talk to our customer base about that, and particularly our past travelers are really engaged with that story, because it's not so much a travel story, it's more a how we do business story or how we behave story. And like, for instance, in the last 12 months we've been doing purely for our Australian audience, because we're an Australian company. We've got a thing called a Reconciliation Action Plan, which is to do with the First Nations people. And, as a business, we've never been as good as we should have been on recognising the importance of our First Nations people in Australia. And so we've been doing quite a bit of work on that, and we've been including, where appropriate, communication through to our travellers so that they can learn from the whole experience as well, just so that we can all grow and gain some knowledge and become better citizens ourselves together.
That's fantastic. So is most of your business direct or through the travel channels, or how does it come?
Yeah, it's almost exactly half-half. And it's been a funny journey over the years. When we started, we knew nothing about travel, and so didn't know how the travel industry or anything worked. We didn't know there was a travel industry, and so we just kind of back in those days, we just assumed you'd put an ad in the newspaper, people would read the ad, then they'd book the holiday, and away you go. Didn't kind of work that way. Very expensive, and we had no money. And then someone suggested, "Oh, you should work with travel agents." So we thought, oh, okay, how does that work? And turns out, we didn't know at the time that the travel agent, you don't have to pay per se, but they take a small commission from every sale. And so we thought, oh, that's good. We don't have to pay them until they pay us, if you like.
Right.
And so that became virtually all our business for 10, 15 years. And then past travelers increasingly wanted to just book directly with us. Yeah. And so we started direct bookings. And so for a long time, it's been about, when I say a long time, probably the last 3 or 4 years, it's been about half of our business through travel agents and direct. And to a certain extent, we don't care. As long as our client is getting the information they need to get before they depart, and they're finding us, and the travel agent is adding value to the whole equation, then we're super happy working with agents, and they've helped grow our business enormously. On the other hand, if a client wants to book and we've got the capacity to serve them directly, then that's okay too. And we've got what we call a multi-distribution strategy. So we just work with different distribution channels in different markets. And like the US market is quite different to, say, the German market,
totally,
the UK market, etc. And so you've got to take an attitude, well, with what works in the local market is what works, and that's the way we go.
Right.
Reinvent things.
So direct business varies from country to country, probably for that reason. So some countries are stronger on direct than on agents, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And for reasons you don't necessarily always understand, like in the US, where you are, our direct business is considerably higher than our global average. Whereas just north of you in Canada, it's the other way around. Go figure. You wouldn't think it would be that different, would you? But it is.
Yeah. That's good. Okay. So I've read quite a lot about your vision, change the way people see the world. And you've stated you've got a 2025 strategy, which I guess you had to revise in view of the terrible situation we've been in the last 17 months.
Correct.
But tell me, I mean, it's a really good document. Can you tell our audience a little bit about it?
Yeah, look, I suppose I guess if you go back right to the start, when we started, and kind of two university people who didn't want to get a real job, we'd both done travel, and so I suppose we were really captured almost by the power of travel, in terms of changing your lives and changing the way you think. And I suppose I guess I realised that I'd had a relatively privileged upbringing, in that I had, a loving family. I had access to a good education. Nothing really had gone wrong, and a very normal background. It wasn't, super privileged, but it was good. And when you travel, particularly in developing countries, you realise that how privileged your background is. And so I suppose we just realised that a lot of people kind of don't understand how the work works, and you're in your own little bubble. And so we wanted to take people on a holiday for sure, but we also just wanted to educate people about the world and realize not just their good fortune, but how they can play a constructive role in the developing of the world. So part of that is financial. Obviously, if we're traveling to areas that aren't touched by the travel industry or whatever, then it's money going into pockets of communities that often are quite economically disadvantaged. So there's a huge financial benefit there. But also over time, you start to realize that there's a real cultural benefit too. You meet people in little villages and in restaurants and so forth, and you have conversations. And those conversations are two-way. It's not like it's just from them to me or me to them. It's it's true communication, and everyone is the better for the experience. And that's kind of the early stage. And just as that's progressed, we thought, well, how can we do more? Our travellers really latched on to that as well, and our staff have as well. And so we just thought, well, let's keep going with that. How can we help make the world a better place? How can we improve education standards? How can we work with health? How can we do other things that a traveller and a staff and the local community can really all see the benefits of? And that in itself helps build a sustainable industry and a sustainable business, because everyone's kind of working on the same page. There's shared value being created beyond just me as a shareholder or a traveller or a staff member. There's real, we're almost on a purpose type mission together.
You're also
so that's the story,
you're
but
opening
really,
minds too, aren't you? You're opening minds.
That's right, absolutely. Yes, and if you meet a stranger from a different country, and they might have different skin color, they have a different religion, they eat different food, they have different all sorts of things, and those conversations, you kind of realize, yes, there's lots of difference, but on the flip side, there's also lots of commonality. We all care about our kids and our family. We all aspire to better lives. We value things like education and health and the environment. And you kind of think that, it's same but different. So for all those differences, there's so many commonalities as well. And a lot of people, I think, go to the difference rather than go to the commonality of humanity, really.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. And then in 2002, you took the step of creating the Intrepid Foundation, right? Which apparently has donated over 11 million Australian dollars in grants, and now is going to a direct aid model. I mean, that's a big step forward. That's a lot of commitment.
Look, it's not really a big step. It's just been a progressive step. So, before we started the foundation, we were doing bits and bobs anyway, and just in terms of helping local communities. And, we realized we weren't doing it very well, and we could do better. That's why we started the foundation, and travellers got on board. And just every year, the work of the foundation and the impact we've had has grown. And so I suppose the last couple of years, we've just decided to really take it even further and build it in as a part of the real overall experience of Intrepid, both for a staff member, but also for the travellers and the local community. So, it's just a progressive thing. It's just part of what we do now.
It's fantastic. So your company is completely dedicated to climate change. Can you explain how you're affecting that change?
Yeah, I think this was one of those kind of embarrassing things where, and it's quite a while ago, it was back in 2004-05, we'd won a few awards and things for being a responsible travel business, and feeling a bit smug, a bit proud of ourselves, all that stuff. And then I read a book on climate change just because I didn't know much about it at the time, and it really opened my eyes. And I just thought, oh my God, we're not a responsible travel company. We're environmental vandals, because when you think about it, a travel company takes people from one corner of the world to the other corner of the world, incredibly carbon intensive. And we just thought, we've got a real problem here. We're being hypocritical. And so we started on a pathway to understand the problem more and measure our emissions and try to reduce them and so forth. And over the last 15 years or so, we've just got more and more engaged in the process and getting our house in, not just our house in order. We've done that a long time ago, but really saying, okay, well, how can we take that further, both in terms of advocacy, leadership, really impacting on people's lives again. It's the biggest problem the world's got. And so, we talk to lots of people. We just think, well, we can do something about trying to get to the next step.
Fantastic. And that book, was that book The Weathermakers?
It was, yes, that's right.
By Tim Flannery?
Indeed, a fellow Australian.
That's right. And is that a book you still recommend people read, or has things moved on?
I haven't read it for a long time, but I know a couple of our staff actually did read it not long ago, and they just kind of dropped us a note and said, "Hey, it's a fantastic read." I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." because it's 16, 17 years ago, I think he wrote it. So it's not new.
No.
I'm not sure if it said it or not. Hopefully it has.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So then last year, it all moved a little bit further when you became Vice Chairman of Sustainability and Chair of the Sustainability Committee of the WTTC. And now you're looking at how all WTTC members can tackle climate change by 2050. That's a huge initiative.
Yes, now that is a huge initiative. I'll give you that one. And to be perfectly honest, when I was asked to take on the role of Vice Chair to do this sustainability work, I said no, because it was a bit daunting for me. And, you know, we're a decent sized company now, but in the World Travel and Tourism Council, we're still a relatively small company. And I guess I kind of think I'm pretty inexperienced at that level. And so I was really concerned about it. But anyway, they managed to convince me otherwise. And so that was 7 or 8 months ago. And it's certainly a work in progress. But you know, I am pleased to see that one of the first things we did was just put a call out to members, and there's I think it's about 170, 180 members of the WTDC, but they're all very big companies, you know, multi-billion-dollar companies, to say the least. And we got 40 of those members specifically engaged with climate experts within those companies to assist us creating multiple pathway streams to not just decarbonise the industry, but get rid of plastics, broader environmental footprints, human rights issues, etc. And so that was incredibly pleasing, just to recognise that members wanted to change. And those members really can speak with a very powerful voice. The travel industry accounts for 10.4% of global GDP, or pre-travel industry, pre-pandemic, pandemic did, and 1 in 10 jobs. And so if we can improve the sustainability footprint of the entire industry, that's having a material impact on the world. So, you know, it's a piece of work to be done, and it's really it's an honour to be able to play a part.
So the corporate companies stepped up to the plate. There are 40 of them. What about governments? Because do governments get involved?
It's interesting, isn't it? So you know, WTDC is very much a trade group. You know, it's a member group. We do deal a lot with government, but we're not. You know, it's not governments aren't members, and so yes, we liaise with them and try to work with governments, and that particularly is around travel facilitation. You know, be it visas or health passports in the context of COVID and so forth. Not so much in environmental and sustainability areas. Having said that, you know, the biggest challenge right here, right now that we have is in the lead up to COP26 in Glasgow in November, where we want to take a unified position for the travel industry into COP26 and make announcements. Now, the travel industry is incredibly diversified, as you know. You know, a cruise ship is not a hotel, is not a tour operator, it's an airline.
It's very fragmented, very fragmented.
It's very fragmented. And so to take we do have a unified position that we want to be net zero by 2050, but to get the methodology for that and back it and verify it, that's quite different, and that's hard.
Yeah. But do you think you'll make November to be able to make an announcement?
We'll be there. Yeah.
Good. Fantastic.
Take the cat out of the bag or whatever, but
no.
We certainly hope to be there. Now, it's still a work in progress, though. Having said that,
yeah, and so, but it is a big challenge. You've taken on a really big challenge there. Is this for you a 5-year challenge? I mean, how does it just to get it going?
Yeah, look, and that's right. And you know, I guess being an ex-CEO. Patience is not one of my virtues, and so I naturally want to kind of accelerate this through, and I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve a little bit at times where, you know, you're not getting the level of progress that you want to see, and so that's hard. And I kind of got to remind myself and others remind me that, hey, this is about 2050 ultimately, and 2030 as interim targets. So your 5-year mention is a good one, because I think it's all fine to say we want to be net zero by 2050. To be honest, 2050 is actually too late, and that's fine, but it's the pathway how you get to 2050. So that's where interim targets by 2030 are absolutely critical. And so different sector or subsectors within our space are forming up interim targets. So, I was talking to Arnold Donald from Carnival Cruise Lines the other day, and they're formulating a 2030 target right now, which I think is in the process of being announced. And that's just a huge step forward, for a cruise industry to take leadership like that is incredibly helpful, because, cruising is a good example. Shipping is a hard industry to decarbonize. Some areas like transport, for instance, you've got electric cars coming. We all know they're coming. There's known technology, but shipping isn't like that. No. Shipping go all around the world, long haul. Decarbonizing shipping is very difficult. Now, it will happen. It has to happen. But as Arnold said to me, he said, we pretty sure we can get to 2030 and have a massive reduction by 2030. To be perfectly honest, we're not 100% sure how we're going to get to 2050 yet. But I'll quote him, he said, it's just got to be done. And that kind of attitude I thought was fantastic.
That's great. That's fantastic. So we're in a situation now where borders are still closed in lots of places. I mean, even in your own country, in Australia, there's lockdowns still taking place. What are you looking at 2022? Are you seeing your business come back in 22, or do you think it's going to be 23?
It's going to be much better than it was, but it's going to be 2019. And I think, the overall travel industry will not be 2019. So what we will see is very, very patchy performance. And you're already seeing this to a certain extent. So domestic and regional travel will arguably be higher than it's ever been before. So just speaking purely personally from our own company, Intrepid, our US business is actually higher than it was in 2019. But it looks completely different. It's not a New Yorker going to Kenya. It's a New Yorker to Utah, and so that's unusual. But and so in that sense, companies that have the ability to flex their product mix will do okay. And Airbnb is a pretty well-known example now, where their transaction level is really very high, but it's got such a different flavor to what it had 2 years ago. And
so your US business, just dwell on the US business for a minute. You've had to reinvent that almost, right? Keep it domestic. That's amazing, and it's doing better than 2019 already.
Yeah, and it's kind of extraordinary, isn't it? That you're 30 years into a business, you think you know what you're doing, but you've still got to reinvent. But it's kind of fun too. It's just kind of saying, well, okay, so if we've got an American in America and they want to travel in America, what does that look like? Because it's actually a very different product to what it might be in Vietnam or something. And it tends to be shorter. Not surprisingly, it's much more active. Now, that's something we didn't necessarily expect. So we're taking people on walks and bike trips and things like that, rather than touring, let's call it. So it's quite a different nature. And so, it's been an interesting journey. And some countries we've really struggled with it. In Australia here, we've got some product which is hitting the mark and doing well, other product which just isn't working. And and England again, it's different again. So it's each local team has to really examine what the moving parts are that makes a trip really resonate for a client to say, hey, I want to do that. That sounds like fun. That's going to take me into a place that I couldn't do myself, and where I'll just have a great time. That's ultimately that's all you want to do.
That's fantastic. So with all your years of experience, everything you're doing in sustainability, what would you like our audience to take away from our conversation?
I think ultimately, it's the same kind of thing that I've always had, and that is just think about how you travel and what it means. What are your behaviours? What would you like to see yourself? So therefore, how do you extend that out to others? How do you extend that out to the behaviours when you travel, what you do? And think about the style of travel. Do you want to learn and discover and change yourself a bit and grow through that travel process? Or do you want to just sit on a beach? And, I'm not going to criticize people who want to sit on a beach. I do it every now and then too, but just have a think about how you travel and what you do when you travel.
So where's the place you want to go to next when you can? And I know you can't at the moment. Where do you want to go?
Very bad person to ask that question, because I've always given a long answer, and now it would be even longer because I'm so incredibly frustrated because I can't get away. So, to be honest, I'd get on a plane and go anywhere I could, I think is the answer. So first place possible. I'm lucky enough I got a place in New York, so I'm desperate to get back to New York. Yeah. But also I just want to go to somewhere new. I've never been to Ethiopia. I'm very keen to get there. I want to get to the Stans, Uzbekistan. I've been wanting to get there for years. I've never got there. In fact, just pre-COVID, I had a fantastic trip lined up in Western Russia, then going up through into Scandinavia, which I was incredibly looking forward to. Obviously, didn't happen. So, look, yes, travel is good. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, well, thank you. So this has been fascinating, and congratulations on everything you've achieved and a wonderful company and all you're now doing with WTTC, which I think is even greater if you can get that going. It's going to be so superb for everybody. So thank you for that. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. This is Peter Bates from New York for TravelDine. Goodbye.